We're talking on the program about strategies to become a millionaire. Stop and think about that for just a second. Isn't that something that you'd want to do, right? Live the life that you've dreamed of, be able to be in that elusive category of people who are in fact millionaires. Yes, indeed, there's more and more of them. So it's maybe not as much or as prestigious as it used to be, but still pretty prestigious. Check out any social media posting. Shoot, there's even a game show, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? So it still means something. So what are some of the strategies that, based upon surveys of millionaires, that would allow you, assuming you actually adopt these strategies, otherwise you're left to kind of twist in the wind, to become a millionaire? Well, we talked about one before the break, right? That is getting your debt under control and ultimately having it all paid off in retirement. Another great concept is to always reinvest your profits, right? And what that means is if you've got something that pays a dividend or pays some interest, then you use that income that's coming off of your portfolio to just go ahead and buy more shares of maybe that company or that fund of where that dividend or interest came from. So the beauty of that is that not only are you purchasing more shares of that particular company or fund, but consider the power of compounding that comes with that, right? If my stock or my fund is paying a dividend of, say, 2%, well, then if I take that 2% equivalently and reinvest it and use that to buy more, well, then ultimately I'm increasing my annualized rate of return. And the more I increase my annualized rate of return, the greater the power of compounding, right? Because if I'm making a 5% return versus a 8% return, then my money is going to double at a much faster pace, right? If I'm making 8%, then my money doubles in 9 years. If I'm making 5%, then my money doubles in, I got to do the math, 14 years. So that's a little bit longer of a period of time. That's a pretty significant difference when you stop and think about it. So always make sure that you are reinvesting whatever income that's coming. Make sure it is getting reinvested. Another strategy, and this one is probably one that everybody has heard about, because it's something that gets talked about a lot, and that is simply living below your means, but of course making sure that you're living within your means. Most millionaires report that they certainly made their money, made their wealth, if you will, became retirement ready by spending much less than what they earned. Living within a budget. We all know that that's not fun, but it's a good exercise. Reducing spending, prioritizing financial goals. Those are the kinds of things that you can do. There's been books written on that. Millionaire Next Door has become one of the more popular ones. So what are some of the things that you can do to kind of help to reduce down your expenses? There's a lot. I mean, we could spend the next 10 weeks of the program talking about that. But what immediately comes to mind is something we've already said, which is kind of avoiding the new car every 3 year type of an approach. Similarly, these days, monthly subscriptions. We've talked about that in the past on the program. It's amazing how much those monthly subscriptions can add up. More importantly, you forget about which monthly subscription. I had an Amazon Audible account that I thought I canceled, but then I looked at my credit card statements and I hadn't canceled. It had been going on for like 6 months. So those are the kinds of things that you have to take a look at. Similarly, one of my kids does a tremendous amount of shopping at Goodwill. I'm always amazed at what he comes home with. Nice polo shirts and everything else in between. And like for $20, he picks up like 6 or 7 different things. And some of them he's like, I don't really like that, but because you only spent $2 on it and it doesn't really affect that much. But there's certainly opportunities out there, particularly if you're one of my kids and shopping at Goodwill, that there's certainly some opportunities to save some money and live within your means. And then lastly, the notion of sort of creating additional income where you have that opportunity. And beyond just the notion of, okay, I can work an extra shift, or I can maybe do a side gig or a side hustle as a lot of folks refer to it as, but think about investments as well. That's sort of perhaps where renting real estate comes into play. There's a lot of great opportunities, whether it's Airbnb, to be able to do that, particularly if you've got a property that you're not using that frequently. Goodness knows, I'm a big fan of Airbnb. I've used them, and VRBO as well. Used them many times when I've traveled with the kids. It's certainly a lot more cost effective than ultimately renting a bunch of hotel rooms, plus you get the kitchen, so you save on not having to kind of constantly eat out with every meal when you travel. But if you own a property, well, then guess what? That's an extra source of income that ultimately you can wind up generating money from. I certainly did that. I had a property for many years on VRBO that generated some nice income that helped to cover the expenses of that property. So certainly some things to think about, and certainly some good strategies that ultimately go directly to help you achieve that millionaire status. So, based on the studies, there's definitely a strategy and a multitude of strategies. So I want to follow a bunch of them all at the same time. And then that way you get to be a millionaire much, much faster. But certainly some tried and true strategies that you can follow to get to that status during the course of certainly your lifetime and before you get to retirement. So we're going to reintroduce the program, of course. It's Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. My name is Joel Garris, certified financial planner and certified financial fiduciary with Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of folks that stand ready this week to help you change your life with a successful and cost-effective financial plan. So we got to get to this last category that we were talking about at the top of the hour, because it's a really important one. And certainly there's a lot of dollars flowing. So as is always the case, you got to follow the money and say, okay, what's going on here? And does it make sense for me to do the same? Am I somehow going to be missing out if I don't do this? Well, I think when we think about the numbers, particularly when we think about cash, you always think about cash is king. And certainly when you think about the number of dollars that has been going into cash equivalent types of investments, it really is king investment in the year 2023. Here are the numbers. $488 billion have gone into money market and CDs this year, up from a total of $577 billion and $36 billion in the year 2022. These numbers are just staggering. There's just a tremendous amount of money that's flowing in. And it makes sense, right? Because for the first time in like 15 years, these types of accounts, particularly money market funds, are actually paying a little bit of interest. So if you have money there, you're saying, hey, wow, that's cool. I'm getting a little bit of interest return on this money. So that's always good, rather than just sitting there and never actually earning a penny of interest. But the reality is that you really need to be thinking about making sure that you're not making cash and money markets as your overarching investment strategy. Look, money market CDs, things like that make perfect sense when it comes to emergency savings. Look, even I was sitting a couple of months ago looking at my bank statement and saying, well, there's a bunch of extra cash there, and it looks like I'm not really dipping below that number as I kind of have money coming in and money going out to pay the bills. And that's just sitting there, not really making anything. So I need to do something about that. And so I began down this path, or this journey of trying to make a decision between, okay, so should I do a CD or should I do a money market? What's the difference? What's the pros and cons? And that's what we wanted to share with you on the program, is to sort of share our experience and some of the things that we put into consideration when sort of making that decision. Because clearly there's a lot of money flowing there. So you want to make sure that you're making the right decision when you are flowing money that way. So we're going to take a break. When we return from the break, I want to start off by setting the table for some things that you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about investing cash and using CDs and money markets. So there's a little bit of buyer beware, if you will, and then we'll get into the pros and cons on CDs versus money markets coming up here next here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning.